You guys have lived up here for, man, I guess it's actually coming in on about a year at this point, but can you kind of talk a little bit on what it is that kind of made you guys decide to make the move from Oklahoma to Alaska?
Do you want to take part of that, or do you want me to take all of
Go
it, Mel?
ahead.
Okay. Uh, Me being the influential, crazy husband that I am, that absolutely loves the outdoors, in August of 2020, we came up here on a fishing trip, and Melissa and our son, he's 12 now, absolutely just fell in love with the place. I knew that I was going to anyway, and whenever we got back to Oklahoma, we kind of, I kept telling her, hey, we ought to move. We ought to move. We were looking at real estate at different places as we'd go along. And I'd be like, hey, there's a house for sale there. And she'd just roll her eyes at me, which is kind of a common response from her, is rolling her eyes at a lot of things that I do and say. Uh, and, it by October, I think, is whenever she was like, she just looked at me one day. We were actually standing outside in our backyard. I was messing around in our garden that we had. And I had said something about moving, and she just looked at me and she goes, let's do it. Let's do it. And at that point, we started trying to move quickly because I didn't want her to start backing out. So
That's I've kind of noticed that with couples. There's always the let's jump into it, and there's the other one that does good at kind of reining things in. So it's good
well,
to have the
I
dynamic.
don't really, I usually don't just stick my toe in and check the water. I figure as long as I know it's deep enough, I just do a cannonball and just jump right in. So that's definitely kind of how we are.
Oh, good deal. So Melissa, was there any one moment that made you decide that, okay, let's do this, let's take the plunge, or was it kind of a slow, gradual thing for you?
It was definitely something I've been thinking about since we've been home.
I'm not hearing you, Melissa. Can you?
It was something I'd been thinking about after we got back from vacation. And um, so we just decided that we're not getting any younger and we wanted to live life to its fullest. And why not?
We 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 didn't want to be those couples. Me working in cardiology, a lot of my patients are older, and so many times I heard the "I wish I would have, I could have, I should have," and we didn't want to be those people. Uh, Kind of a little back note on that is both of Melissa's parents had passed away in 2019, so we really didn't have a whole lot that was just making us hang around in Oklahoma. So, through a series of definitely unfortunate events, it kind of helped pave the way to make it a little easier to make that move, if that makes any sense.
Oh, it definitely does. I mean, that really did stand out to me. I remember, driving home from Palmer, um, and the first time that we talked, and that really stood out to me that, you were talking that, you work in cardiology and you've got a lot of folks that always talk about the regrets, and you guys just didn't want to have that. You're wanting to kind of mirror that, or yeah, kind of create that example for the kids, and just saying, hey, if you want to go do something, then don't be afraid to jump in and take a chance. So that definitely stood out to me in our first discussion.
And that's like what we were talking about just before we actually started the podcast. You're a 12-year-old kid from Oklahoma, has never had a set of snow skis on his feet at all. All he's ever done is basketball and martial arts, and now he's on the cross country ski team for his school. So, definitely he's already taking that ball and running with it as far as not being afraid to step out there. So I'd like to feel like that what we tried to teach him is sticking.
It's pretty hard for it not to stick when they've when he realizes where he's at. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so you guys decided to move up here then, and so we're kind of working on that. What were some of the big initial challenges you guys faced as you were moving up here?
One of the biggest challenges, things that we were looking at with Melissa and I both being in the medical field, honestly, especially during that time frame and still going on, we're going to be high demand. So employment's not really that big of an issue. One of the things that we were really concerned about is we started doing our research for, low crime area, good schools. And, I even dug a little deeper and started doing like some studies through zipcode.com as far as even looking at uh, just a plethora of demographic type data to be able to really feel like we were making an informed decision about where we were moving. When you're going to move 2,800 miles, I didn't want to be surprised by anything, and that's what we really tried to look into and just kind of have all of our ducks in a row. Um, challenges wise, I think one of the biggest is one of the things we kind of found out towards the end that we weren't aware of is we have a Boston Terrier. So some of the flight restrictions and issues with a flat-faced dog about being able to fly, and he's too big to fit in a crate. So we actually ended up having to hire somebody to drive the dogs. So our dogs made a cross country trip through Canada to make it here because we went ahead and sent our German Shepherd with him so that way he wouldn't be alone. So that was definitely a challenge, and that's kind of a whole other story on its own. One of the guy that we had hired to bring him up apparently had some issues in his background that didn't let him pass through Canada. So he kind of turned around and drove back to somewhere in Montana and dropped our dogs off and kept going. So we had to scramble and find somebody else that could get our dogs up here for us. So that's probably was the biggest challenge that we dealt with, at least initially getting up here, was the dogs.